Want a quick audio test? Test 1, 2, 3.
that I am opening the regular school board meeting is now in session. This meeting is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the NLSD Media YouTube channel. All votes this evening will be roll call. A reminder to school board members, when making a motion and seconding it, to please say your name for the secretary to get the correct name for those items. Okay, if we can now, it is open, so can we now stand and pledge to the flag in our own way, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Mrs. Suzak.
Mr. Dissler?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Heckman?
Here.
Ms. Husak? Here? Mr. Keegan? Mr. Keegan?
Here.
Mr. Kern?
Here.
Ms. Culp?
Here.
Ms. Martineau?
Here.
Mr. Fedorcha?
Here.
All are present. We have a forum.
Thank you very much. As always, public comments are accepted during on the agenda items during the meeting. Anyone who has registered previously, Mr. Hill will let me know and allow the speaking of that for that time. Anyone who has not registered will not be able to speak at this time. Mr. Hill will also allow you in if you were speaking. He will also monitor the 5 minutes and let you know when your time is up. We'll move on then to the minutes. I will accept a motion to approve the minutes of the March 1st, and we also had and March 8th. We did have an executive session or a special board meeting on March 1st. So March 1st and March 8th minutes are there. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Green so moves.
Mr. Whistler, second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Gail, would you please call roll?
Mr. Dissler?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Heckman?
Yes.
Ms. Husak? Yes. Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Ms. Culp?
Yes.
Ms. Martineau?
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Special board reports. Mrs. Huzak again, please.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Fedorcha, before we move on, can we just ask Mr. Hill, just so we can get it into the minutes, if there were any people that signed up?
Absolutely. Yes, please. Mr. Hill?
Mr. Fedorcha, we do not have anyone signed up to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you will let me know as things go on. Okay, then moving on then, Mrs. Huzak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. We did have our CLIU board meeting in March. Our next board meeting is on the 19th of April. We are still virtual as well for our board meetings. And there's one thing on the agenda this evening, which is the approval of the CLIU facilities plan. Thank you to Northern Lehigh and Mr. Schneiderwright for offering another Peters classroom for the IU. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for supporting that. And that is on the agenda for approval this evening by the board. That's all I have tonight, Mr. Fedorcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Huzak? Okay. LCTI, most of the districts have approved the LCTI budget. We have now also replaced one of our top administrators And also that we're opening up, we have opened up 4 days, and we're looking forward to having most of the school districts coming in 4 days, starting on the 12th. They're not all coming in at one time. They're coming in progressively. The last two that I know of that is possibly would be Southern Lehigh and Parkland will be coming in at a later time. Allentown will be also coming in, which is great for us to have Allentown coming back into our fold. They have been totally virtual all year long, and now they're going to at least come into the vocational school. So we should have a full complement. And because of how everything is going, I believe Dr. Russian has informed the superintendents that we will be following all the protocols and we will be able to keep safe distances in all of our classrooms. So that's very encouraging, and hopefully we will not face what's been faced even right now with our hybrid, is that we do have to close because we are still following the CDC and the Pennsylvania Department of Education regulations, which means that we have to go into a close down if we do have active people with COVID. So that's where we are right now with LCTI. Any questions? Moving on, legislative, Mrs. Heckman.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. I have two things this evening. So the first item, an amendment was successfully inserted into House Bill 605, which was approved last week, which provides protections for schools from frivolous and opportunistic lawsuits from COVID exposure. So the bill provides a temporary grant of immunity for actual or potential COVID-19 exposure in school settings, unless the exposure is obviously the result of gross negligence or willful misconduct on the part of public schools or public school employees. That bill was passed in the House and will now move on to the Senate for consideration. The second piece of information in the legislative update is that PDE announced the Sr3 allocations. So in total, Pennsylvania is receiving $4.9 billion in federal non-recurring relief funds. Northern Lehigh School District will receive about $2.9 million allocation of these funds. And there are a few rules and stipulations on how we are allowed to use this round of money. At least 90% of the funds will obviously flow, that Pennsylvania received will flow into school districts or charter schools. Pennsylvania will use the remaining funds to address learning loss. Each school entity needs to use 20% of this money to address learning loss and the social, emotional, and academic needs of underrepresented students, and we are able, to use the rest of the funding for a wide range of activities, including food service, professional training, technology, sanitization, summer and after school programs, mental health supports. The list goes on. So I just wanted to report the actual allocation, and if anyone is bored later this evening, you can actually go on the PDE website and type in any school district, and it's just a giant list of allocations of what everyone got. So if you're feeling nosy, there's your activity for this evening. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Heckman. Any questions for Mrs. Heckman? Okay, moving on. L-Tri-C, Mr. Green.
Just a couple of quick things. First of all, we also had our budget, I think, unanimously approved. Even Catasauqua went along with it this year, which is unusual. They usually find some reason not to. And part of the reason for that is our budget now, initially and some years ago, was divided a third between student, state, and supporting districts. As a result of some of the things that we've done at the school, for example, I mentioned to you the major Amazon program that we have. We're able to gander funds from that and help to offset some of the other costs. The truck driving program with Wegmans would be another. Participating district share now are down to a little bit over 10%, about a third of what they had been, some years ago. And I think that's why we're getting a lot of support from the districts. So it was unanimous. Everybody went along with it. The other thing I would mention quickly is you have a ballot, or you received the ballot in the mail. And I understand there are some really interesting people on that ballot who you may want to consider voting for. The guy in the middle, I can't endorse anybody. That would be illegal for me to do that, but I think his name was whatever. And just quickly, the way that works is when the college was established, they established a 15-seat board of trustees with the thoughts that there would be one from every participating district and then 2 people elected at large. Well, it wasn't always 2. At times there were not as many people, so there were 3, 4, 5 people elected at large. As more districts joined, they got a seat and there were fewer at-large seats. So currently there were 13 participating districts and then 2 at-large seats that are elected by all the other 13 districts, and so that's the voting that you're seeing coming up now. And don't forget, vote early and vote often, as they would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And I do want to thank you also. You are representing Northern Lehigh on the trustees, and you're doing a great job. And we thank you for the years that you have done and will continue to do for us. Any questions for Mr. Green? Okay, seeing none. We did, in your packets, you received the minutes of the policy committee, the education committee, the community relations committee, the technology committee, and the finance committee for your perusals. Moving on then, we will now move on to the students. I'm not sure who's first. Is it you, Paige, or is it Mr. Williams?
That'll be me, Mr. Fedorka. Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all again. First on our report, this past week, seniors received some really good news, which is that the senior prom is back on. It is still, early days of discussion. I met with Mr. Velasquez. He said he's currently working with the class officers and the advisors to kind of figure out a way to continue the prom. On top of that, the junior class is also planning to have a class picnic for this year instead of a prom. And Mr. Velasquez is also working with the officers and the advisors to work out the kinks of both those events. The student council is still continuing to plan Mr. Northern Lehigh for this year. We are still hoping to kind of have a virtual thing similar to how the play was, where we would upload it to the Northern Lehigh YouTube's page. We are hoping to have more news on that very soon, though, so I should have that on the next report. The student council has also currently begun planning and preparing for our next blood drive, which is planned on Thursday, April 29th. And if you wish to donate blood, you can do that on giveapint.org. We really appreciate any donations. It will be at the stadium again, where we will have the blood mobile. Also, finally, as a part of tonight's report, Paige and I both wanted to share a little bit about our perspective on returning to 4 days a week. So it's been a few weeks now, and I've personally experienced a lot of benefits for being back for 4 days a week. I really enjoy being in school because I really found that I learn a lot better in person as opposed to kind of the virtual lectures. And it also lets me engage in sort of the extracurricular activities I'm in, such as student council, National Honor Society, things like that. And for people I've talked to who are doing sports, they really like being in school to help with that. I am, of course, a little bit worried about the spread of COVID, but from what I've seen, most of the students and the staff are really taking the social distancing seriously, which is really awesome to see. And I'm sure things will only get even safer as more people get the vaccine. I myself go for the vaccine on Wednesday. So I have enjoyed being back 4 days a week, and I'm hopeful that if things keep going how they're going now, we'll be back to normal soon, which I'm sure we're all hoping for. So then I'll now pass it on to Paige to conclude the report for tonight.
Thank you, Aiden. Personally, for me, 4 days has also been really good. I'm more of a hands-on. I like being in person, so it's definitely worked a lot better for me. I'm not really good at the online, and I really enjoy being with people and talking. And it's also been really nice. My teachers have been really good with working with me with missed assignments and if anything, because the computer thing and in person, it's doesn't really mix right, and so sometimes things get messed up. So I really appreciate how they've been able to work with me. Northern Lehigh Patriots Club hosts a VA hospital drive from March 8th through the 26th, where they collected donations of socks, toothbrushes, blankets, and etc. for veterans in need. From April 9th to the 11th, the spring musical Nonsense was live streamed to the community, and an anonymous donor graciously donated 100 tickets for students and staff of Northern Lehigh. So thank you to that anonymous donor. On March 18th, the high school guidance counselors held their parent info night for scheduling classes. It was held in a virtual format, and a record number of parents and students logged on to the event. For spring sports, girls track and field are 1 and 2. Boys track are 0 and 3. Softball is 2 and 3 overall for leagues. And we won our game tonight 14-4. And baseball is, I think now it's 0 and 6 overall and 0 and 5 for leagues. So that's all I have for our report tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Craddock and Mr. Williams. Are there any questions for either of our students?
I wonder, Paige, do you play on the softball team?
I do.
Oh, okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on then to our I'm going to turn it over for a second to Mr. Link. I do see on my agenda that Ms. Smith is going to introduce herself, but would you do the formal introduction, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. I'd like to welcome our new school board attorney from the King Spry Law Firm, Ms. Avery Smith. And Avery, if you can just introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit of your background with the law firm, we'd really like to hear it.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. I'm Avery Smith. I'm a partner with King Spry. We're really happy to be able to work with Northern Lehigh. I'm happy to be here tonight. So thank you all. I've been a partner with the firm now, probably 5 or 6 years. I've been with the firm since 2010, and I've been practicing law locally since 2008. So I'm originally from the area, and I grew up actually in East Penn, so not that far from Northern Lehigh, and came back to the area after school. So really enjoy doing education law and serving our local school districts. And again, just very happy to have the opportunity to work with all of you. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you. And again, welcome.
Yeah, Avery, on behalf of the board, welcome. And we're very happy to have you. And one little side note is your firm has also helped us in representing us for a lot of other areas prior with our special ed particularly and so forth. So it's going to be a great relationship that we're going to have to bring everything into like one fold, if I can say that term. And we do want to welcome you and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to our business managers report. Ms. Multuris or Ms. France? Anyone?
I'm just going to share our screen. I believe Mr. Link's going to kick it off. We are going to share our, let's say, 30,000 foot view of our budget. We are still, there's a lot of stuff still going on in our budget, and we have to have it finalized in May for a proposed preliminary budget for approval. So this is just the first look at it, so the Board of Education can see where we're trending, and we'll continue to fine tune it up until that May board agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Multuris, and thank you, Mrs. France as well. So this is going to look familiar to the board members and any of the other participants this evening that were in the last Wednesday night's Finance Committee meeting. We're going to begin by sharing some of the COVID-19 effects on the current year budget. Right away, you'll notice that we have a number of revenue sources listed there, those being grants for the PCC COVID grant for $182,000 plus. We have finished that grant and we have expended all the monies that were made available to us from that grant. Additionally, the PCCD COVID-2 grant for a little over $44,000, we have actually completed the purchases for that grant as well, and has been submitted back to PDE. The ESSERS 1 grant, again, also completed, a little over about $324,500, again, completed. We have two main grants, two main revenue sources from the COVID relief money that we continue to plan to use over the next few years. The ESSERS 2 at about $1.4 million. That grant needs to be completed by September of 2023. And then the most recent one, and this is the one that Mrs. Heckman mentioned in her board update, the SR3 grant at about 2.9 million has to be completed by September of 2024. The last one, actually the last two there, SR2 and SR3, are allowed to use for supplanting opportunities. I'm not quite sure if we're going to do that yet. That's part of the planning process as we move through SR2 and SR3, but that is an option. It's not typically made available in grants, but it is for these two grants. Other potential savings, this is kind of a double-edged sword here. The first one for substitutes. I guess the good news is that we have saved, some dollars dedicated to substitutes and the use of either the permanent building subs or the day-to-day subs. The bad news is that, unfortunately, that's because there are rarely any subs available. Northern Lehigh, like the rest of the school districts regionally and really across the state, have noticed that most substitute pools have really dried up. There are fewer people currently that want to come into the building. Some of that may be, their own personal health and safety concerns. As we work through COVID, hopefully that we see a downward trend in that. The other part of it is just in general, that even prior to the pandemic, there have been declining numbers in the substitute pools, whether it's for support staff or professional staff. A lot of this is really just because fewer and fewer people are going into college and university preparatory programs to become K-12 public educators, which then in turn impacts the substitute pool for us as well. Again, also kudos to the school board for approving the ESCO project a number of years ago. We continue to realize savings for electricity and heating oil. And you'll see that we recognize that in the initial look at the budget as we move forward. All right, COVID-19 has also had some effects directly on our food services budget, which is it's kind of its own standalone budget, but we still want to recognize that we had some negatives there, and that was the loss of revenue from the monthly general operating profits. So we've noted several times throughout this year and the end of last year that the sales for the a la carte sales, the minor catering that the department does, and also just less overall participation from the students when they were in school in the hybrid model, and even more recently. Some positives, though, are that we may recoup some lost revenue during the summer feeding program approved by the USDA. That has been extended through the summer up to the first day that students are back in the building. That coupled with the number of summer programs that we traditionally offer, but now that we're looking to add in to help address some learning loss, we can recoup some funding there from USDA. And of course, something that I like to highlight, almost every board meeting, it seems like, because our community is so generous in supporting our students, especially our students that are most at risk for things like meal insecurity. We've received many generous donations from individuals, groups, the faith-based community, the local churches have really come together and made some significant donations to the school district to support students that are at risk for meal insecurity. Okay, Sherry's going to talk about some projected COVID effects for the 21-22 school year and beyond.
So the IFO, the Independent Financial Office, did their projections on the weighted index as of February 2021. So this is the Act 1 index, so that we our limits for what we can raise taxes from year to year. 21-22 school year came in with a weighted index of 3.4. The base was a 3, weighted was 3.4. We can raise ours by 4%. The IFO last year predicted that this would be at 3.5, so it's slightly less than what they originally projected. For the upcoming years, they're projecting 4.2 for next year, 4.2 again for the 23-24 school year, 3.8 for the 24-25 school year, and 3.1 for the 25-26. So you can see that it's slightly starting to come down again when we hit that 24-25 school year. What they're thinking is it's like happened X number of years ago, 2007, 2008, when the housing market crashed and we had all those issues back then. It was really 10, 11, 11, 12 till school districts started to feel the realization of all that having happened. They're thinking the same thing here. It's going to be a good 3, 4, or 5 years out till we start to see the ramifications of this. So these are their current projections. It's just very interesting year after year to see where that stands. So I always like to present that to the board. Our PSERS update. The updated projections for this coming year will not be out till June of 21. These were the numbers based on June 30th of last year. The 21 school year, they were predicting it would be at 34.95%. It is a 0.01% lower than that. It did officially come in at 34.94%. And then you can see as it still continues to climb through the 22-25 school year, ending at roughly what they're projecting at 37.23%. If we do get updated numbers for them by the time we get to the June board agenda for the final adoption, we will update this slide and share with the board where we are projecting PSERS to go.
Okay, here is a snapshot of the anticipated enrollment numbers for the upcoming school year, and I'll look back to the 2018-2019 school year. You'll see in an upcoming slide what this looks like visually. I will note that the kind of wild card in all of this right now is the incoming kindergarten class. I think last check we were at about 70, 75 confirmed students coming in. We know that that number will continue to rise. Unfortunately, sometimes it rises right up until, you know, the week before school starts or even a week or two after school starts. 73 students, Mr. Schneiderite put into the chat. Thank you, Mr. Schneiderite. The staff at Peters Elementary School have really gone above and beyond this year to accommodate the parents and children of this incoming class, to get them in, get them registered in a very safe environment, and have offered multiple sessions over the Wednesdays when the students are not in school, really just to focus on registering the incoming kindergarten class. And we'll continue to update the board as this number gets updated over the next few months and even into the summer. You'll see when we look at those years that at each building, the numbers remain pretty consistent, which is why we targeted that incoming kindergarten class to be about 110 to 120. There's not too much fluctuation over the last number of years of how many students are enrolled in each building. Here is a look at our employee profile over the last same number of years and the anticipated profile over the upcoming school year. You'll notice in the last column there that some of those numbers have gone up. This is directly related in our efforts to address learning loss. You'll see that we would like to fund some of these positions through those ESSER funds that have been made available to us. But being transparent with any new hires up front that those are grant funded positions and there's no guarantee that they would remain after the grant is exhausted. There may be opportunities for those people to become permanent members of our team here, you know, through attrition of retirees and things like that over the next couple of years, or if the board were to decide to make them permanent parts of our team here, whether it's through attrition or not. Again, I can't, you know, I would like to emphasize that any new hires would be notified up front that these are grant funded positions. Support staff, we're looking to increase 5, and that would be 2 additional instructional aides at Peters, 2 additional instructional aides at Slatington, and 1 at the middle school. Professional staff, you'll see that it's really a net increase of 1, and we'll talk about that a little bit further as we look at each building level recommendations. There, we're looking at ideas of for like instructional coaches for technology, knowing that we've learned so many amazing things over technology the last year, and actually in a very short amount of time. Usually those transitions would take more like 2 to 3 years, but we want to continue to have direct support to our staff to learn and grow in the use of professional the use of technology for teaching and learning. Administration, we're looking to keep at 16, and then the total net increase of 6 positions overall there. And Sherry, this is for your slide.
Yep, so this is the composite from prior years, our revenues versus our expenditures, and the green line is our fund balance and how much fund balance we've used to budget to balance the budget during those years. The red columns are our expenditures for the year. The blue columns are our revenues for the year. And then the green line, as I said, is fund balance. So if you look following the green line in the 18-19 school year, we used almost $1.6 million to balance our budget. And that you can tell by the right-hand side of the slide is our fund balance axis. So a lot of them were all for one-time purchases. We did some of those science lab classrooms, I believe might have been during that year. I know we did some technology stuff. I believe that might have been the year we bought all those laptops. So there was, a lot of that 1.5 million was for one-time single purchases. Last year, or I'm sorry, 1920, yeah, last year, 1920, we used 162,000 to balance our budget. This year, currently, the way the projections are falling, we're going to look like we're probably going to put somewhere around $750,000 back into our fund balance. So that falls below the zero line because we're going to see that we're not going to be using, my prediction currently is we're not going to be using fund balance, and we're actually going to be putting some fund balance back in, which again leads me to, we need to be careful about that because if we put too much money back in and we don't show the expenditures, we worry about losing that maintenance of effort issue, which could affect our grant funding in future years. Some of the things that have already been passed this year, in December, we agreed not to raise our taxes over that 4% index that we are allowed to. We did not apply for any kind of exceptions for special education or PSERS. And again, with putting about $750,000, $60,000 back into fund balance, I'm anticipating our fund balance to end somewhere around 10.5 million by the end of this school year, June 30th of 21.
Okay, the next few slides are going to be some specific recommendations at each building. For Peters Elementary School, like I had mentioned a couple slides ago, we're looking at 2 additional support staff, those being instructional paraeducators to address learning loss. We're also recommending that we relocate 1 professional staff position to Slatington Elementary School based on class sizes. If you recall, a number of years ago, we relocated a position from Slatington down to Peters because of the incoming kindergarten class size. That group of students is now getting ready to go into 3rd grade up here at Slatington. So, you know, back at that original move, we said that we would bring a position back up to Slatington when that class arrives up here, and we are now approaching that school year. We are recommending no budgetary increase for materials or programs at Peters Elementary School. However, we continue to explore options to replace the playground equipment that was removed last year and upgrades to the existing playground equipment that is still there. Again, here we're looking at ways that we can fund this through the ESSER funds, through the health and safety lens for those students at Peters Elementary School. Slatington Elementary School, we're looking at, again, 2 additional support staff positions for the same reasons as Peters Elementary School. And then here's the other side of that second bullet on the last slide, relocating 1 professional staff position from Peters to Slatington Elementary School. Again, we're recommending no budgetary increases for materials or programs at Slatington. Middle school, we're recommending 1 additional support staff, an instructional paraeducator, to help address learning loss, and in particular for one of our most at-risk groups, and that is students with disabilities, which is part of that required 20% designation that Mrs. Heckman noted in her board update. And a reduction of 1 professional position through attrition. We're recommending that the English language development program / gifted, or teacher of the gifted, there, that position be filled with remaining staff after their retirement. And again, no budgetary increases for materials or programs at the middle school. At the high school, we're recommending status quo for support staff and professional staff, and no budgetary increases for materials or programs. And now Mrs. Moltorus is going to describe some of the cost drivers and cost reductions.
So these are cost drivers over the 2021 school year. So in 21-22, our salaries are projected to show an increase of $483,000. With that comes retirement increases of $212,000. Our medical insurance showed an overall over 10% increase in our premium shares for the year. So that's an increase of $200,000. So security is an increase of $32,000. Our charter school costs for this school year has gone up $456,000. In 1920, the district paid almost $1.3 million in charter school expenses. This year, I'm projecting by the end of the school year, we'll pay about 1.27 or 1.725%. $1,725,000, which is an increase of $456,000 over the prior year. And technology, we have built that in every year. That's to, like I said, probably about 3 years ago, we paid for all of our laptop one-on-ones at the high school and for all of our teaching staff. A one-time purchase, it was almost $600,000 out of our budget. We have now been increasing the technology budget so that in year 4, they can go out and get those leases, they can get those new laptops, and we can go back into a lease agreement that will renew every 4 years because we're anticipating the life of laptops to be 4 years. And we also saw an increase in our LCTI of $75,000. That's our contribution rate to them. Remember, that is based on our student enrollments who go down there. And they also had some construction upgrades with that welding lab and some other facility upgrades down there. That is all part of bond payments that we make to them as well. Cost reductions are, as Mr. Link said, we continue to see that we are able to decrease our electric costs due to that ESCO project. Heating oil currently, probably about 3 years ago before we did the ESCO project, we were seeing at the middle school, high school, and I think Slatington, Mr. Durr had said, we were seeing anywhere from 3 to 4 truckloads of oil, heating oil, that we were needed a year. It looks like now we are averaging around 2. So we are waiting, though, for the bid opening on April 30th. Currently in the heating oil area of our budget, we have it budgeted flat from last year, but we feel that we can probably reduce that again once the heating oil bids are in. Again, those 2 savings are a direct result of the ESCO project that was approved by the board the other year, which was a very... you can see what it's doing to our budget. It's taking some of those expenses out of our budget. And we had an outplacement that is no longer being outplaced because the student aged out this past year. So at that point in time, we can see a reduction in the outplacements as well in our district. So our current budget revenue, our real estate tax collection rate at a 1% reduction. Last year, we all, and when I say that, I mean Lehigh County School business managers kind of all said we weren't sure where this was going to go. So we were originally collecting at a 93.75% collection rate was our average over a 4-year span. So the consensus was we were all going to drop it by about 1%, thinking that with layoffs and things that were happening with COVID, we were not going to have people, taxpayers in our community were not going to be able to pay their taxes. Believe it or not, we collected at a 94% collection rate, which means the district received an additional $300 and some thousand in real estate collections that was not in the original budget, which is some of that money that we're seeing that we're not going to need to use fund balance that is going to roll in the fund balance. We are recommending for next year that we raise that back to the 93.75% for the 21-22 school year. And that is really based on those IFO projections. They're not showing that they don't think you're going to see any kind of a hit yet. It's going to be a couple of years out. So we are recommending to go back to that 73.5% tax collection rate. 21-22 potential tax freeze if we would end up. So I was looking at building the budget at 93.75% collection rate, which would be keeping Lehigh County at the exact millage rate it currently is. The step ratio did not change that much between our two counties. So Northampton counties would be just a hair below what they were this year. But in doing so, if we would end up saying that we are not going to raise taxes during the 21-22 school year, we would see a loss of $338,000 in our real estate tax collections next year by raising it up to that 93.75%. And remember, if you lose that, then every year moving forward, you do not have that money as you're added to your tax base, which then you add the tax increase on top of that year after year. Per capita reinstated to the same as the 1920 school year rates. The district did collect their per capita real estate taxes as they did in 1920. So again, we're looking at moving that back up to where it was. EIT collections, we decreased by 15%. We did see a slight decrease, but not a 15% decrease. So we are recommending, it has been built into the budget, to increase that back up by the 10% that we originally took off of there. We are still seeing a reduction in interest in investments because, as you know, the market still isn't there for investing at this point in time. But again, the Board of Education made a good decision by deciding to move to Nest National Bank and make that our bank of deposit for our local deposits. We have been seeing a nice anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 interest every month on the money that we have sitting out at Nest Bank. So Nest Bank is a great partnership with us. They give us money for our STEAM camp every year, and we're really glad that we were able to partner with them in order to be our bank, our school district banking institution. And again, I thank the board for doing that. I think it was a very wise decision. State and federal revenues, they're budgeted flat for basic education and special education. The concern that many of us are sharing, and we just were on a PASBO call, Lehigh Valley ASBO call on Friday, we have a fear that basically Governor Wolf threw everything at the wall. He wanted to give the education everything prior to his last budget. This is his last budget before he's done. The problem being is, on top of it, when he walked out of that meeting, then you heard the caucus saying, forget it, that's never going to happen. He needs to change this all around. Now, on top of it, you have school districts getting, us almost close to $5 million in ESSER funds, and many other school districts getting a lot more money than that. We have a feeling that the legislature is probably going to end up saying they got enough federal monies coming in. They don't need the money in education. Let's move it elsewhere. So there's that little bit of a fear out there that we may not see any kind of an increase in our basic ed or special education funding. So at this point in time, we have flat funded that, but I will show you what that looks like later if it does actually come to fruition and we do get some of that money. So our current fund balance, this was as of June 30th of 2020. We had a committed fund balance of $2.7 million. That assigned current year usage was $207,000. We were looking at only using $207,000 of our fund balance this year. Again, it looks like we're not even going to use that, and we're going to end up putting fund balance money in. Our total assigned fund balance was $4.58 million. Our unassigned fund balance is almost $2.2. We ended our June 30th, 2020 with $9.7 million in fund balance.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. To review some of our long-term planning for facilities. You'll see that the first number of lines there are completed projects, looking back from 2019 to 2020 up through the current year. You'll notice that we're recommending a delay in the Northern Lehigh Middle School furniture replacement, the replacement of the large utility shed and pole building down by the stadium. We are recommending that out of this year's current budget, out of the 2021 budget, that we do complete the field house and stadium parking lot crack and seal coating, as well as the same project over at Peters Elementary School. Again, we're recommending that we complete those projects out of this year's current budget. We've already replaced the little dump truck that arrived earlier this school year. We are also recommending the delay of furniture purchases for the high school. We continue to research cost and funding sources for the Northern Lehigh Middle School kitchen, which is a project that was identified back in the 18-19 school year. We've met as recently as this afternoon with a representative from the McClure Company who did all the HVAC and energy savings work at the middle school to see if they could help us scope out a project to present to the board, and then we would have to make the decision if we wanted to move forward with that and how would we want to fund it. We are looking deeply into if there's any funding opportunities through the ESSER monies available. And then you'll see the rest of the upcoming year's recommendations or kind of a guideline. We know that none of these are written in stone, but a number of things that we continue to plan for up through the 24-25 school year, with one note that we have purchased a new zero-turn lawnmower. And again, that was done out of this year's current budget.
So this is where we think our fund balance is going to end at the end of the 2021 school year. So as of June 30th of 21, our beginning fund balance, as you saw on the previous slide, was 9.7 million. And we are anticipating ending at about 10.5. That's with that 700 and some odd thousand dollars that we anticipate putting back in the fund balance. So where we are thinking our 21-22 school year fund balance, we would have a committed fund balance of 2.689. That yellow box is the area in which we would use some of the fund balance in order to balance our budget. So our current year budget is right now $1.1 million short, but that current budget does not take into consideration any employee retirements that have been received or anything that is going to happen with healthcare with premium share costs. We kind of are holding off on this, waiting to see ratification of a possible teachers agreement this evening, and then we can make these adjustments prior to the May board agenda and the proposed preliminary budget being approved. And if you look then, we have total assigned fund balance at 5.4, unassigned roughly about 2.2, and we'll end at about 10.5 at the end of the school year. So the tentative big picture is currently, again, our expenses are at 34.377 million. Now, again, that is, like I said, it has all of the teachers and staff members as is right now, this day, this picture, all coming back next year. As we start to accept some of these retirements on our board agenda, we will start to adjust them in our budget. Our revenues, we are looking at a projection of receiving about $33.1 million in revenues, which gives me a short budget of 1.19, almost a 1.2. Of that 1.2, currently PSERS increases are 212,000, so we're making the recommendation to pull that out of our PSERS fund balance. Healthcare increases are 200,000. We're recommending taking that out of our fund balance, and then the additional amount needed to balance the budget is $785,000. So if we use all of that $785,000 and we do not decide to raise taxes, if we take that all out of fund balance, we are going to go from the anticipated 10.5, and we're going to take the 1.2, which is the 212 in PSERS, the 200 $1,000 in the healthcare and the $785 additional. We're going to end our fund balance at the end of the 21-22 school year with a projected 9.3% fund balance. So here I talked earlier about potential additional revenues not in our current budget. So that governor's budget, proposed budget, he has our basic education that we would receive $116,000, almost $117,000 more than we did this year, and special education subsidy increases of $233,000. So the two of them together are really close to $350,000. That is not revenues that are in our current budget. So if we do receive some of this money, that will offset that $785,000 that we are short yet. One thing that you need to realize though, and keep in the back of your mind, that we currently have that budget at 33,700,000 and some thousand, I think it was, or 34 million. That does not include our bond payments. Last year, we took a freeze on those bond payments. Last year and this year are the final years for that bond payments. In the 22-23 school year, those bond payments are going to come back, which are $3 million. So currently this school year, we are looking at being almost $1.2 million short, and we're going to use some fund balance. Next year, when those bond payments come back, we're going to add $3 million in expenditures. So we're going to need to find $3 million in revenues in order to make up those bond payments, or we're going to be using more money out of fund balance to balance our budget.
Thank you, Sherry. So our current administrative recommendations are to consider a tax increase and utilization of fund balance to generate some revenue for upcoming year. Transportation subsidy, continue to work with Brandywine for fixed costs for the 2020-21 school year. So our subsidy is not affected going into that year. And to continue to look for opportunities to decrease expenditures or increase revenues as more information becomes available on ESSER's 2 and ESSER 3's funding and supplanting opportunities. Okay, so thank you, Rhonda. For this evening, we are not, there's no action that needs to occur. We just want to continue to update the board as we move through the next several months leading up to the final vote in June for the 21-22 school year budget. And that's the business office report for this evening.
Thank you very much, Sherry and Rhonda, and you, Mr. Link, and all the administrators for putting in their time and patience into putting into this budget presentation for us tonight. And as you said, this will be ongoing until May, and then we will have a tentative budget, and we will post it publicly and then vote on it in June. Any questions, anyone? Okay, hearing none, we will move on then, and we will move on to our Assistant Superintendent's report. Dr. Stoker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. My first update this evening is regarding grants. Mr. Link and Mrs. Heckman did cover a good deal of the COVID and ESSER related grants, so I'm just going to highlight some additional pieces to those grants. So our PCCD COVID 1 and COVID 2 grants have been completed. Some of the things that we were able to purchase with those two grants were some of our PPE gear and some of the things that we needed for social distancing and to function within the school buildings, including thermometers, plexiglass, masks, gloves, eyewear, social distancing stickers, disinfectant, halo machines to spray down our classrooms, some supplies that we needed in our office, Chromebook cases, water, some of the gaiters that our students wore for sporting events and things of that nature. With our PCCD COVID grant number 2, we were able to purchase those bipolar ionization systems that help to deactivate the COVID-19 virus. So those two grants have been expended. We have our 3 ESSER grants, as we were discussing this evening, which total about $5 million. Our first one has been expended. That included the rest of the bipolar ionization systems, some software licenses, plexiglass, hotspots, some of our live streaming systems that we had in the classrooms for teachers, tables. We also purchased classroom management software, and additional thermometers and things that we needed for temperature checks, social distancing, things of that nature. With our SR2 and SR3 funds, we're looking to buy the water bottle filling stations that we have talked about at a previous board meeting, some supplies for testing that's happening this spring for calculators for our PSSA and Keystone testing. We had art supplies for students who were not actually in our buildings, but we're doing virtual, 5-day virtual at home, and we're needing our art supplies to participate in their classes. Some additional technology platforms. We're looking to do a spring literacy program in our elementaries. We purchased some books for that. And we're starting to discuss possible expenditures for learning loss with regard to SR3. As discussed earlier, we need to spend 20% of our funding from SR3, which amounts to about $600,000 on learning loss. So I'm working with our principals and Mrs. Dada to come up with what we're looking to do for that learning loss program. So that's something we'll be talking at our building administrative team meetings this in one more week. We'll roll that out at Curriculum Council and bring in our educators to talk through some of the details with regard to that, as we're doing in faculty meetings. And then we hope to have a tighter plan to roll out at our Ed Policy meeting in May. So more to come on what that learning loss will be as we move into the spring and then also into the summer months. As discussed, there's a tidings clause that applies to federal funding. So the last ESSER grant, which was originally supposed to end in 2023, actually gets extended for an additional year. So these grants will run through 2024. So September of 2024 will be when we have to expend our last grant by. My next two items on there are accountability waiver and a graduation guidance. I'm going to try to put those two together. On March 23rd, Pennsylvania submitted their request to the U.S. Department of Education to get a waiver for accountability, school identification, and related reporting requirements for the 2021 school year. On March 26th, the U.S. Department of Education granted that waiver. And I want to be very clear that this is a waiver for Pennsylvania for accountability purposes only. It's not a testing waiver like we had during the 1920 school year, where we did not have to do state testing with our students. So students still in Pennsylvania and at Northern Lehigh are still required to sit for the state assessments, including PSSAs, PASA, Keystone exams, and WIDA. That is not a local decision. I know some people have been questioning that with regard to why is Northern Lehigh still giving tests or still requiring students to test. It's not something that we have an option. It is a state requirement. It is a federal requirement. So we will be giving our state assessments. With that, Slatington, the middle school, and the high school, their tests will be coming up. PSSAs will start at Slatington on April 20th. They'll start in the middle school on April 19th. The middle school also gives the Keystone in Algebra 1, which will begin on May 18th. And then the high school will be giving the Keystones, and their Keystone exams will start on May 18th as well. LCTI has also received approval from the Pennsylvania Secretary of Education for their NOCTI and NIMS waiver for 2021. So those tests will not be administered to students who attend LCTI in their programs. Some students received a non-numeric proficient on their Keystone exams in the 1920 school year. However, they may still need to, for graduation, depending on what graduation pathway a student follows, to still take those graduation assessments for Keystones as they move into the high school, or if they're in the high school as they continue to move up in grades. So as previously reported, Act 136 postpones graduation requirements until the class of 2023, which is our current sophomores and later. So some of those students may be the ones that need to take the Keystone exams depending on which pathway they're using towards graduation. And that's all I have for this evening. Thank you, Mr. Fedorchuk.
Thank you, Dr. Stoker. Are there any questions for Dr. Stoker? Hearing none, we will move on, Mr. DeLink, to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. And for the first two parts of my report this evening, I'm actually going to turn my time over first to Mr. Weber. He's going to give an update on the upcoming STEAM camp. And then when Mr. Weber is done, Mr. Velocity will give some updates on end of the year activities and logistics for the high school. So Mr. Weber, when you're ready, you can share your screen and give us some exciting news about the STEAM camp.
Mr. Weber?
I'm working on getting ready here. Okay. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'd like to thank the school board for the opportunity to share one of the many great things that are happening in the Northern Lehigh School District. Unfortunately, the events of the last year prevented us from holding our STEAM camp. The goal of STEAM Camp is to interest students in the areas of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and career awareness in these fields of study. So we're making a lot of plans and getting a lot of progress in preparing for this coming summer. We're excited. We have all our staff secured for the summer. Myself and Ms. Butz have been working hard on making preparations. We've secured all our staff. We have 2 staff members from the elementary level, 1 from the middle school, and we have a retired high school teacher. Ms. Tamara Spitz is from the Slayington Elementary. Mrs. Frank is from the middle school. Mrs. DeBilio is at Slayington Elementary, and back by popular demand, Mrs. Christine Leslie, who is a retired high school biology and anatomy instructor, will be coming back, and we have secured all those positions. This is a look at what our schedule would typically look like and what we're planning it to look like each day. The camp will be held in person on the weeks of June 21st through the 24th and June 28th and through July 1st, with contingency plans to be remote if the conditions require the change. Just a little side note, we are working with Mr. Pine as he prepares for the summer learning program to provide opportunities for pull-out between that program and our camp. 2 years ago, when we had our last camp, our attendance goal was 60 campers, and it fills up very quickly. So our goal this year is to increase our camp attendance enrollments to 70 campers. All our funding is funneled through the Northern Lehigh Education Foundation. And thanks to, and was mentioned, I think, by Sherry Malatorres earlier tonight, the National Bank continues to support us through an EITC grant for a 4th year in a row, where they provide us with $20,000. And just a side note, our budget does usually take in at least that amount of money. So we are working on gaining funding in other areas, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. Another exciting thing that we've worked out through Mrs. Sue Bannock, the food director, is through the federal and state USDA grants. All our snacks and drinks for camp this year will be provided free of charge. We are, as always, trying to get out the word on what is happening at Northern Lehigh, and each year we invite the Times News, and Mr. Terry Arner always does a great article on camp. We always contact the Morning Call, Channel 13, Channel 69, and this year we are going to be inviting Mr. Chris Barnes to come and do an article from the high school slate. as I talked about earlier, some of our funds also come from other corporate sponsors. And so we have set up, like we did 2 years ago, a donations link where we share it with those corporations, and they can go right on and make a commitment and a donation using that system. Some of our past corporate and individual donors are on the screen here. And whenever someone donates, we give them credit through our website. We also try to include those donors on t-shirts that we have printed up for each camper. So when they wear those t-shirts around the community, people see that these other organizations are supporting us. Registration is going to be open on Sunday, April 25th at 3:30 p.m. We'll be doing it like we have in the past through the Northern Lehigh School District website. And like I said before, we're limiting it to 70 campers, which is an increase over 2 years ago. And we've found that enrollment usually fills up within 1 to 2 days. So if you have somebody that's interested, let them know that date, and so they can get ready to enroll. Finally, I'd like to make sure that the school board is invited also to come and visit our camp. The suggested times are 9:30 to 11:45 when we're having instructional periods. If you'd like to come, if you could please contact myself or Miss Jennifer Butz and give us notice of your plans so we can make preparations. One thing I didn't include also is we also have, as we did 2 years ago, invited officers from the Nest Bank to come and see what we're doing so they can see and get excited about their financial commitment to us. At this time, I'm going to stop sharing and see if I can get out of this. Let's see. And does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Tim, it's Matt Green. I saw you had the corporate sponsors up there, and I also noticed, I think Lynn Kronemeiser's name was up there. So I assume individuals can also make a contribution if they like?
Yes, yes.
And how would individuals do that if they wanted to do that?
You could do that on our website that is linked on the Northern Lehigh website. There's a link there where you can go on and commit to sponsoring us.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Mr. Weber, this is Gail Husak. Thank you so much for the presentation. And I apologize if I missed it. Can you just confirm the grade levels of students that can attend the camp? And I apologize if I missed it.
No, I'm sorry, I did not include that. That's students going into grades 3rd through 6th grade.
Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else? Well, thank you for allowing me to present.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. It's a great program for our kids, and this year particularly, our kids need something. Okay, anybody have questions? And we'll go back to you, Mr. Link.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Weber, for putting that presentation together. It's always very informative and always gets me excited knowing that STEAM Camp is around the corner, and I'm happy that we're going to be able to host it again this summer. Next, I'd like to turn it over to our high school principal, Mr. Velocity, and he's going to give some updates on some very traditional and ceremonial end-of-year activities for the high school, and I'm excited that we're able to talk about these activities again as well. Bob?
Good evening, everyone. The 131st commencement ceremony honoring the Northern Lehigh class of 2021 will be held on Friday, June 11th at 7 p.m. in Bulldog Community Stadium. Gates will open at 6:15 p.m. The rain date is Saturday, June 12th at 10:30 a.m. with the gates opening at 9:45 a.m. Under current CDC and Department of Health recommendations, we will be able to hold a traditional ceremony with at least 6 tickets per graduate through the utilization of both sets of home and away bleachers. Now, the senior award ceremony will also be held at Bulldog Community Stadium on Friday, June 11th from 5 to 6 p.m. We have decided to hold this event in conjunction with the commencement ceremony in an outdoor venue for safety and convenience for our families. Gates will open at 4:30 p.m. and admittance will be by invitation only to those seniors receiving awards or scholarships. Our rain date will also be Saturday, June 12th at 8:30 a.m. with the gates opening at 8. I am also very happy to announce that the senior class officers, my students, Paige Craddock and Aiden Williams kind of gave me some foreshadowing there. Thank you, both of you. I'm happy to announce that the senior class officers and I have been working to plan the prom, and we have a solid plan. The prom will be a senior-only outdoor tented formal event on Saturday, May 15th. No dates from another class or school are permitted, with the rain date for May 16th. Dinner will be catered and served by the one and only Mrs. Bonnick and her awesome team. Formal dress is recommended. Prom dresses and tuxedos are not mandatory. However, classy dresses and suits are acceptable. If in doubt, then please see me for approval. In planning this event, we have carefully incorporated the recommended health guidelines in regards to 6-foot distancing, mandatory masking, and sanitization. However, despite our consultation with the Pennsylvania Department of Health, we could not come up with a feasible solution to dancing, so dancing will not be permitted. The prom will begin at 5 p.m. with an arrival hour of photographs by Life Touch, hors d'oeuvres, and beverages. Then we will serve dinner, raffle off prizes donated by the community. Thank you to those community members that are raising those for us. We will also introduce the prom court and crown the king and queen. Additionally, there will be a selection of outdoor activities available. Lastly, we have an inflatable movie screen to show a movie, to be announced yet, we haven't decided that yet, with popcorn and beverages. Seniors will be required to space themselves out 6 feet apart on the turf in order to watch the movie. We have also arranged gift bags for all seniors, regardless if they attend the prom or not. They may pick them up in the main office the following week. In conclusion, I'd like to thank Mr. Link, Dr. Stoker, Mr. Durr, Mr. Hauser, and my senior class officers, Caleb Hankey, Kristen Gelcher, Dylan Miller, Trent Herman, and Elijah Jackowitz for their guidance and feedback. I would like to give special thanks to Mrs. Bonnick and Mrs. Nolan for their help and assistance in putting this all together. Without their help, this would not have happened in such a short amount of time, and I'm truly excited to hold this event. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes my report. Does anyone have any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Lassity? Anyone? Seeing none, Mr. Link, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Velocity. I think you are officially the best hype man ever. That was a great presentation. Next, I just have one other update. I had mentioned earlier this evening that, we love how much the school district is supported by its generous community. And this evening, I would like to announce that we did receive a $750 donation from Ed Law Interactive to go towards the high school musical, which was presented this weekend. So I would like to publicly acknowledge Ed Law Interactive for their generosity to our students, our faculty, and in particular to the support of the Northern Lehigh Little Theater. And Mr. Fedorcha, that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Link. Are there any questions for Mr. Link? Anyone? Seeing none, we shall move on then. I will make an announcement that we did have an executive session held on April 8th for the purpose of negotiations. We had an executive meeting this evening at 6 o'clock for personnel and negotiations. Speaking of personnel, we shall move into the next items. I will accept a motion to approve the personnel items A through G. Do I have a motion?
Mrs. Martineau, so moved.
Matt Green, second.
Thank you very much. It's been moved in second. All those in favor signify by, well, first of all, are there any questions? Oh, okay, then we shall go into roll call. Mrs. Huzak.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Heckman?
Yes.
Ms. Husak? Yes. Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Ms. Culp?
Yes.
Ms. Martineau?
Yes.
Mr. Disler?
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you very much. Mr. Link, I will turn it over to you if there's any particular items on the agenda under personnel that you would like to highlight.
I would just like to acknowledge all of our retirees this evening, from our middle school principal, Mrs. Chamberlain, to our teachers, to our support staff. And as we approach their actual retirement date, we'll celebrate a little bit more of their years of service to the school district and to at this point, thousands of students that they have all supported. And again, congratulations on your retirement. And I look forward to sharing more information about each of you as we approach your retirement dates.
Thank you, Mr. Link. Any questions, board? Anyone? Thank you. We'll move on then to policy. I will accept a motion to approve the policy items A and B. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mrs. Robbins, so moved.
Do I have a
Second, Gail Husak?
Thank you. We will now go on to a roll call vote. Mrs. Huzak, please.
Ms. Heckman?
Yes.
Ms. Husak? Yes. Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Ms. Culp?
Yes.
Ms. Martineau?
Yes.
Mr. Disler?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you very much. Is there any conferences? I see none on here. Okay, we'll move on then to curriculum. I will then accept a motion to approve the curriculum items A and B. A and B. Do I have a motion to do so?
So moved, Gail Husak?
Michelle Heckman, second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Husak? Yes. Mr. Keegan? Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Ms. Culp?
Yes.
Ms. Martineau?
Yes.
Mr. Disler?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Heckman? Ms. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Is there any old business, anyone? Old business? Hearing none, I will accept a motion to approve the new business item.
This is Mrs. Culp, so moved.
And the new business item, just so everyone knows, it is for the collective bargaining agreement. We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Green.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Ms. Culp?
Yes.
Ms. Martineau?
Yes.
Mr. Disler?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Heckman?
Yes.
Ms. Husak? No. Mr. Fedorcha?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. And just a reminder that this is, for the public, that this is the collective bargaining for our Teachers Association from July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2023. Thank you, board. Moving on, I will accept a motion to approve the financial items A through H. A through H. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a motion?
Mrs. Culp, yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. Any questions on any of the items under financial?
Mr. Fedorcha, this is Gail
Yes.
Husak. I do have a question in regards to the summer band camp.
Yes.
Is there any, I thought there was some funding that was available for summer programs. I'm just curious if there's any way to help with that tuition per student with those grant money, if at all possible, to help our students in our community have students attend the band camp for 1 week?
I think that's something we can definitely look into. We have not received a definite yes from PDE, but that is a possibility. And I will ask Dr. Stoker to reach out to them to see if that type of camp would also be funded. If it is, we could always put a revised agenda item on with what the new cost may be.
Thank you, Mr. Link. Thank you,
Certainly.
Dr. Stoker.
Thank you, everyone. It was properly moved and second. Am I correct, Mrs. Husak? Okay, could you do a roll call then, please?
Certainly. Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Ms. Culp?
Yes.
Ms. Martineau?
Yes.
Mr. Disler?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Heckman?
Yes.
Ms. Husak? Yes. Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Is there any legal? Any correspondence?
None this evening.
Thank you very much. For information, the minutes of L-TRI-C, LCTI, and the community call, or the IU, those minutes are in your packets. I will accept recognition of guests. Mr. Hill, is there anyone?
We do not have any recognition of guests tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
I did sign up to speak tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was for your section.
No.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that.
If I could,
Sorry about that, Mr. Weber.
Mr.
Okay.
Weber,
Yeah, Mr. Weber did sign up. I apologize for that. I thought it was for the section that he was speaking on. Go ahead, Mr. Weber.
no problem. Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, you are. Please, Tim.
Just a small note, as the Northern Lehigh Education Association president, I would like to thank the school board for working closely with us in renegotiating our contract extension for another 2 years. And I'm looking forward to great things in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. And I personally would like to thank both boards, the board and the association's teams for coming up with an agenda item for this evening and a ratification. Thank you both. You did an excellent job. Okay, moving on then to adjournment. If there's no other information or business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Fedorcha, Bob Kern here. Can I say something quick?
Certainly, Mr. Kern, please.
Yeah, I'd like to recognize a gentleman who has been part of the Northern Lehigh School District and servicing the district for many, many, many years. And his recent passing, Mr. Charles Stopp. I just wanted to be recognized that I appreciate his contributions to the Northern Lehigh District when I was there as an educator and as an administrator, and continued long after I left the Northern Lehigh School District. And I think it would be remiss if we did not at least recognize the contributions he made to our community and to our districts at this time. So kudos to you, Mr. Charles Stopp. May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Kern, and I think the entire board concurs with you. Is there any other one who would like to address the board from the board? Anyone? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So
Do I have
moved, Leo
I
Husak.
thought you had one. I thought you had one, Gary, no?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
Okay. We do have a motion now, Mrs. Husak, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And a second, and I'm sure everybody wants to go to dinner.
Mrs. Martineau, second.
I gotta make dinner, Mr. Fedorcha.
Roll call, please, Mrs. Husak, for the last time for this evening.
Ms. Cope,
Yes.
Ms. Martineau,
Yes.
Mr. Disler,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes,
Ms. Heckman,
Yes.
Ms. Husak, yes, Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Kern,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Stay well. Stay safe. Good night,
Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Everyone, have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.